Hi guys, it's Jess and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be talking about all of the books that I read in January, and I managed to complete 8 books, which I am super happy with, so let's just jump straight into the video. So I just want to quickly show you my stats page in my brand new reading journal. I've been very excited to start filling out this journal, and yeah, I just like how it looks. I think it's super cute, and it's just a good way for me to keep track of all the things that I am reading throughout the year and whether I am reaching my goals or not. So as I said, I read 8 books in January, which is pretty good considering to reach my goal of 52 books in 2021, I only need to read 4 books a month. So I am 4 books ahead of schedule, which is good because it means that if I do have a couple of months where I kind of fall behind a little bit, I don't need to worry too much. I've given myself a good head start. But I also put down like the amount of pages that I read in January, which was 2,388. Not that anybody cares, but I just thought that it was something cool to add. And my most read genre in January, which is very surprising actually, is young adult. Considering I don't read a lot of young adult, I am pretty surprised that that was my most read genre this month. So anyway, let's just talk about the books that I read. So I want to give a quick mention to this bad boy here, The Complete Stories of Sherlock Holmes. I've had this book for so long, and I've dipped in and out of it and read some of the stories in this book over the years. I'm very familiar with Sherlock Holmes, but I know there are some stories that I still haven't read, and this wasn't on my January TBR. I never planned to pick it up, but there was a point in January when I was just feeling myself heading towards a reading slump, and I just kept looking at this book and I just kept thinking, I really want to read some Sherlock Holmes. So that is what I did. I DNF'd a book and I picked this one up straight away, and I managed to read 2 stories. I read Study in Scarlet and The Sign of Four. Both of those are Sherlock Holmes novels, so they count as 2 books. So technically I read 10 books, but I'm just going to count this as one whole book, and then when I finished it, whenever that will be, this year, then yeah. But anyway, I'm really enjoying delving into this. I'm currently rereading The Hounds of the Baskervilles, which is by far my favourite Sherlock Holmes story at the moment, and then throughout February I am doing a read along with a couple of people over on Instagram, and we're all going to be reading The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, which I am super excited about because I've read those short stories quite a lot in the past and really enjoyed them, so it'd be nice to delve back into them. So there's that. So let's talk first about the book that I DNF'd, and that is Hot Milk by Deborah Levy. So this one was always going to be either a love or a hate scenario, and yeah, I just didn't enjoy it. I DNF'd it at about 80 pages. I wanted to try and get to page 100 before I made a decision about DNFing it, but it got to the point where I just really couldn't carry on reading it, and so I had to put it down, which is a shame because the plot of this book did sound really interesting. It's all about this young woman who is taking her mother to Spain to try and find out what is wrong with her. She has what is classed as a medical conspiracy. Her legs don't work anymore. She struggles to walk and no one really knows why. And it just sounded really, really intriguing. I wanted to know more about her illness, but the first 80 pages were just so dull, and I just really couldn't get on with it. Don't get me wrong, I think the author's writing is absolutely beautiful at times, and there are some quotes in it that I just really, really love and really stand out. But the thing that annoyed me the most about this book was just that the characters talked in riddles all the times. So they weren't talking specifically about what you expected them to be talking about. They just kind of went off on tangents. It's kind of like, you know, when you're sitting with a group of friends and you're talking about one thing and then all of a sudden the conversation switches and you don't even notice it switches until it's too late, and you just sat there like, what is going on? That is how I felt when reading this. It was just really confusing. And yeah, I couldn't get on with it. And I am sad because this was one of my around the world picks. And in hindsight, I wish I hadn't picked this book. So I think I'm going to try and find another book for Spain, and I'm probably going to try and find an actual Spanish author this time. So I'm going to do a bit of research into that. But this one just wasn't for me, unfortunately. And I'm not surprised, considering quite a few people told me they read it and didn't like it. So that was the only DNF that I had in January, and I'm actually surprised that I have DNF'd a book this early on, because I am one of those people that likes to power through until the end, but we're not going to do that in 2021, so I'm sticking to my promise to myself of just like not finishing books that I'm not enjoying. So we'll see how that progresses throughout the year. But anyway, we're going to move on to the books that I did like, and we're going to start with the lowest rated books to the highest rated, so then we can end the video on a positive note. I don't have any poorly rated books in this video. All of the books are 3 stars and up. I had a lot of 4-star reads this month, which is really good, so it was a pretty good month for reading in January. So the first book that I want to mention is Dreams of Living and Remaining by James Meek. I was pleasantly surprised by this one, actually, because this book is all about Brexit, and honestly I have been so bored of hearing about Brexit for the last few months, but I wanted to educate myself on the subject a little bit more, because I am quite politically clued up. Like, I am interested in knowing what's going on, but with Brexit there's just so much confusion surrounding it, and people say this, and like there's so many different conflicting statements that it's hard to kind of know what's true and what's false. And this book did a very good job of kind of establishing what the actual facts are, while also telling you what people's opinions are on certain things. And I found it really interesting, because this book talked about a range of different topics like fishing, the NHS, farming, the financial crash of 2008, and how that's kind of impacted people's decisions a little bit. It was just really captivating, actually, and I was really interested in the first chapter, which talked about fishing. So I don't know anything about fishing, and it's a subject that I really don't care about, but it was really cool actually to find out about this thing called the Cod Wars, which happened in the 1970s, and I don't know how to explain it because it is quite complicated, but it was basically about Iceland closing off their fishing borders to other countries to stop other countries from like stealing their fish, essentially. And other countries have done it since, and when Britain joined the EU, they had to abide by the EU fishing laws, and Britain has always kind of wanted to have their fishing borders back. Big thing that was talked about a few weeks ago on the news. So I found that really interesting. I didn't think I'd be so excited by the Cod Wars, but there we go. And that chapter was set in Grimsby, which really helped, because Grimsby is a town that I know very well. I spent a lot of my childhood there. Big fishing port. I really enjoyed this book. The chapter about the NHS was also set in Leicestershire, which is where I live. And it was kind of looking at how the Leicestershire hospitals are run, which was kind of interesting, but that was the chapter that dragged on the longest, and I didn't really see what the point was, and how it was linked to Brexit. That was the only chapter that kind of didn't make sense to me, but still really interesting. I really enjoyed this book, which was a surprise because I thought I was going to be rather bored, but yeah. 3 stars. I would recommend you read it if you want to know a little bit more about Brexit. Obviously it doesn't give you every single thing that you might want to know, but it does kind of open up the doors for you a little bit. My next 3-star read is Pine by Francine Toon. I'm not really surprised that I ended up giving this one 3 stars, because I have seen a lot of mixed reviews about this book. And there are a lot of things in this book that I did like. I think I mentioned in my January TBR video that this book follows a young woman called Lauren. Well, I was wrong, because Lauren is actually a 10-year-old girl. But it essentially follows Lauren and her father Niall, who live up in the Scottish Highlands. And Niall is a single parent because his wife Christine, Lauren's mother, left them when Lauren was a baby, and he doesn't really know why, he doesn't know what happened to her. So that's kind of like the central theme surrounding this book, all about kind of like memory and grief. And I loved the atmosphere in this book. I thought Francine Toon did a really good job of creating a kind of melancholic and brooding atmosphere, and I think the Highlands definitely adds to that. Great location. I loved all of the Scottish culture included in this book, like the music and the language. I loved it. It was just so much fun. I loved a lot of the mystery elements to it. There is a mystery halfway through when a girl goes missing, and that is not a spoiler, that is in the blurb. The twist regarding that mystery was really surprising, and I didn't see it coming. So I really liked that. I liked the writing style. It was very simplistic, which made it very easy to get through. I did read this one quite quickly. But it just kind of didn't have the wow factor that I was hoping it would have. It has elements of like gothic horror in it, but it wasn't as heavy on that as I hoped it would be. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not surprised that I gave it 3 stars, but it was still a good book. I would still encourage you to read it if you want a light ghost story. If you're someone who wants to read spooky things but you don't want to read something that's going to scare you shitless, then this one would be a good one, because it's not heavy on the scare or anything. It's just kind of mysterious and a bit of fun. It has a lot of really cool like elements to do with superstitions and stuff like that. So I still enjoyed this one, and I also read it while it was snowing here, and that definitely amplified my winter experience a little bit. So we're going to move on to some 4-star reads, and I have 4 of these, so I'll try not to talk about them for too long. But one of the first 4-star books that I read was 'Twas the Night Shift Before Christmas by Adam Kay. This is a follow-up to his memoir This Is Going to Hurt, which I read back in 2019. I think I actually read it in January 2019. I listened to the audiobook and I really enjoyed it. Adam Kay is a great writer. He's really witty and he has great sense of humour. He's about as sarcastic as me, so I totally got all of his jokes and things like that. I absolutely loved it, and this book was no exception. It was a lot of fun. It's just him talking about his time as a junior doctor working in hospitals over Christmas, and there are some moments that will make you laugh out loud when he talks about like the weird patients that have come in that have done like weird things to their bodies, and he also talks about more hard-hitting, more emotional situations that he's found himself in, which can be quite upsetting. So I will put a trigger warning here and say that it does talk about loss of a child and things like that. It's quite heavy. I think Adam Kay does that really well, where he can switch from being really witty and funny to being really sensitive and respectful the next minute. So I really enjoyed this, and I just wish it would have been longer. I read the ebook and it was only about 100 pages long. I felt like it was too short, but it was just a lot of fun to read, and every chapter starts with a funny poem that he's written, and I will put one up here because I can't remember it off the top of my head, but this is a poem from the first chapter which just made me absolutely howl with laughter. And yeah, like really recommend this one. Go and read it if you haven't, because it's great fun. Next, we've got The Legendary Shiver by J.H. McCall, and this is a book that I wasn't aware of until the author approached me on Instagram and asked me if I would read and review it for him. Now, I don't normally take requests like that just because I don't know if I'm going to be able to commit to these books on time, but this one really interested me, so I said yes, and I'm really glad that I read it because wow, like I wasn't sure if I was going to love this as much as I did. It centers around celebrity lifestyle and how celebrity can impact your life and influence the choices you make and how those choices can reflect back on you, etc. This follows a guy called Will who meets a girl called Ruby in school, and they become like the best of friends, and we follow them over a period of 10 years as they move to New York to start their careers, and Ruby becomes a superstar singer. That's what she's always wanted to do, and she pretty much becomes famous overnight, and Will is there to support her while also trying to, start his career in the music industry while also being in love with her. And it was so frustrating watching Ruby live her life and be in relationships with other people while Will was pining for her. And honestly, I just wanted to grab his fucking head and just smash it against the wall and say, like, just tell her you love her. Like, but that's all I'm going to say without spoiling it for you. But I really, really enjoyed it. There were so many twists and turns. This book just kept on punching me over and over again. And it got to the point where I did kind of wish that it would just slow down a little bit. I can't keep up. You're making me feel all these things. I need a break. But yeah, really enjoyed this. Hated the way it ended. I mean, it was a good ending. It really shocked me, but I wish it hadn't ended the way it did. But overall, really impressed with this one, and I can't wait to see what J.H. McCall brings out next, because I do think he has got a great career in writing ahead of him. Then we've got Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nagun. So I started this at the end of 2020 and I finished it off in January. And I'm very impressed with this one because a lot of young adult fantasies I haven't been enjoying as of late. So I wasn't really sure what to expect with this one. I know loads of people absolutely love this series and I am so behind. I do need to read the second book, but this one is all about a girl who gets uprooted from her family and sent to live in the King's Palace, where she becomes a paper girl. So she is a member of the paper caste, which is kind of like the lowest form of society in this world. You've got the paper caste, the moon caste, and the steel caste. And the moon and the steel caste are comprised of like demons, and they have different appearances, and they're considered, a lot wealthier and have like celebrity status as well, some of them. But this girl, she gets picked to become a paper girl, and the paper girls are essentially there to serve the king. So whenever he wants sex, he will just call up one of the paper girls and they're there to please him, which is pretty gross. But things like that have and still do happen in the world. So it was very interesting to see that highlighted in a young adult book, and that topic made it quite dark actually. It was heavy. So I will say that this book does contain scenes of violence and sexual assault, and the author does actually include those trigger warnings on the back and on the inside of the book as well. So do be a bit cautious going into this if that is something that affects you. But I do think Natasha Nagun has dealt with those subjects really sensitively, and she really respected her characters. You can tell that when she was writing them. I love all the women in this book. I think they are so well-rounded and they just have really cool personalities and they really shine in every scene they're in. And I think the main character in this book is just absolutely phenomenal. I absolutely love her. She is so strong and she really stands up for what she believes in. She doesn't take any crap from people. And I just loved seeing her grow and evolve and adapt to the situation that she's in. I was really rooting for her the entire time. And I love the inclusion of the Malaysian aspect in this book. The writer has Malaysian heritage, so she included that as inspiration, which really makes the book stand out, makes it so much more unique. And this book also has a beautiful female-female romance, so I would definitely encourage you to pick it up for that as well. My last 4-star read of January was Concrete Rose by Angie Thomas, and I will admit I am pretty surprised that I gave this 4 stars because I was very convinced that I would give it 5 stars. However, I don't think this book had the emotional punch that I was expecting it to have. When I read The Hate You'd Give, that book was just so emotional and really effective in getting its message across. And I don't think Concrete Rose had the same impact. However, it's still a fantastic book. And at this point, I feel like Angie Thomas can do no wrong. She is such an incredible writer. She writes her characters so well and with such respect, and you can tell that she knows her characters inside out. Even the side characters, you know, the characters that just play a small role, you just know that she has, you know, made up an entire backstory for them because they just have such great charisma on the page and they just really stand out. I absolutely love, again, I've said this before with The Hate You Give, how Angie Thomas writes families and their dynamics with each other. And it was just great seeing Maverick's relationship with his mum, the to and fro that they have with each other, you know, the banter. It was so much fun to read, but how his mother is trying to, you know, encourage him to be his own person and make his own decisions while, you know, still supporting him. And I also loved his relationship with his father, and there was a really interesting scene where he went to see his father in prison, and I'm not going to say any more, but it was just a great scene and I absolutely loved it. And it made me love Maverick so much more. He is such a great character. I loved him in The Hate You Give. I found him really compelling. So when I heard that this book was coming out and it was going to be about Maverick, I was 100% here for it because he's really interesting, and I loved seeing how he dealt with the situations that he was thrown into. This book is set 17 years before The Hate You Give, and at the start of the book, Maverick finds out that he is unexpectedly a new father, and he has to kind of deal with looking after this new baby while also being in school and dealing with the King Lords and Garden Heights. And it was just great seeing him grow as a person, and the end of the book was great. Like, there are just so many great moments in this book, and I do think that if you love The Hate You Give, you are going to love this one. It was phenomenal. It just didn't have that emotional punch for me. So we're moving on to the last book of January, and this is my only 5-star book of the month. And is it any surprise that that book is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig? So I will try not to talk about this too much because I have talked about it a lot over the past month. And I did do a reading vlog on this, so I will link that somewhere up the top for you. I can never remember which side it is. Is it that side? I think it's that side. Oh my gosh. This book was everything and more. I can't stop thinking about it, and I did want to reread it, but I just never got the chance. So hopefully I can reread it again very soon, because there are a lot of things in this book that I need to go back over and just experience again. But Oh my gosh, yeah, it was just incredible. Everything that everyone is saying about this book is absolutely true. And if you haven't read it yet, then you really need to get your ass in gear and go and read it, because it will not let you down. Like, the whole concept of this book is really interesting, and I think that's what Matt Haig does really well. He takes like ordinary everyday situations and puts like a fantastical, a magical kind of twist on them. Some of them are sci-fi, some of them are like urban fantasy, some of them are like, you know, inspired by Shakespeare and stuff like that, just going off his past books. But this one was just probably one of the best books I have ever read. I couldn't put it down. I read it in about 2 days, which is probably quite long for a lot of you guys, but it's quite quick for me. So this book does feature very heavily on mental health and suicide. So again, be cautious when going into it, because the first few pages of this book is very, very heavy. And we are following Nora Seed, who is considering taking her own life. And one night she swallows a bunch of pills, and that's when she gets transported to the Midnight Library, which is kind of like the in-between life and death. And this library contains infinite versions of her life, and she just gets to experience different possibilities of what her life could have been like if she'd taken a different path, if she'd made a different decision. And it was just really interesting to see how she evolved and how her thinking changed. And this book is really reflective, and it will definitely make you think about your own life and the things that you have done that you regret or don't regret, or it just really makes you appreciate what you have right now. It definitely made me realise that I should be happy with what I have now, because I might not have it better if I'd done something differently. And I just love that message. I really needed that. I have been dealing with a very temperamental kind of headspace the last few weeks, and my mental health hasn't been the best. But this book definitely helped for a little while. All of these books helped, to be honest. You know, these books all helped me escape reality and forget about everything that I have been constantly worrying over. So yeah, I can't complain. Like I said, I've had a great reading month in January, and I'm really excited to see what February brings. So I'm going to wrap this video up here. I hope you enjoyed watching, and please feel free to let me know if you've read any of the books mentioned in this video and what you thought of them. I would love to know. Please leave a cheeky thumbs up if you liked this video. Please subscribe to my channel so you can see more videos from me in the future, and I will see you all in my next video very soon. Bye guys.